Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. Arguably the most anticipated Switch games in recent memory, rivaled only by Sonic Frontiers, set to be released in the next few days, bringing with them a whole new generation of little monsters to catch and train. Not only that, Scarlet and Violet are set in an open world for the very first time. Finally, an open Pokémon game! Something fans have been dreaming about for years! And after Zelda and Sonic made the jump to open world, it's time for Pokémon to do the same. But what could this mean for the future of the franchise? Will Scarlet and Violet set a new norm for Pokémon? It's possible that these new games are the natural evolution to the little tweaks GameFreak has been making for the last couple of years. Let me explain. To figure out if open world Pokémon is the new norm, we need to first take a look back at the history of Pokémon games. First off, we need to go back to the Nintendo 3DS with Generation 6, Pokémon X and Y. The Gen 6 games are notable for being the very first mainline 3D Pokémon games, since the series traditionally used 2D sprites from Gen 1 to Gen 5. The addition of the third dimension really changed how we perceive the world, especially with the camera being able to show us our surroundings, constantly moving about during battle, even just letting us move diagonally. Now, previous games had sections where the camera managed to give this sense of perspective, notably in Gen 5, but Gen 6 took that idea even further. Nothing illustrates the new 3D perspective more than Lumio City, which felt like an actual life-size city, so big that there's an entire taxi system in it. Following that was the addition of the Dex Nav in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Now, why is that important? Because it was the first game we got to see certain interactable Pokemon like Ralts and Zigzagoon pop out of the tall grass and be catchable. Auras also introduced the soaring feature, which allowed the player to ride on Mega Latios or Latias, depending on the version, using the Eon Flute. Now, you can now soar through the open Hoenn skies and gain access to islands that were otherwise inaccessible. So Gen 6 brought us a whole new dimension, soaring, and also started experimenting with 3D models of Pokemon out in the overworld. That's cool and all, but surely it doesn't end there. What about the following generation? Pokemon Sun and Moon didn't really add a whole lot in that department, mostly publishing what was already started in Gen 6 with the camera angles and now giving the player the ability to see a little bit more. Now on top of that, we got to see even Pokemon standing next to their trainers. The Ultra games even added scenes where the player and the rival House starters would come out with their Pokeballs during certain cutscenes. Then we have the series' first Switch games, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, which completely ditched random encounters, instead having the Pokemon fully visible in the overworld. This was a huge change for the series, as you could now go for a specific Pokemon instead of continuously roaming through the grass or even skip them entirely. The Let's Go games also brought back a fan favorite feature, Pokemon following you, but they also added the ability to ride them. Now only a select few could be ridden, but the idea of taking your Pokemon out, hopping on its back, and zooming around Kanto was something new entirely. You could even fly in the skies and have flying encounters. Being able to interact with your Pokemon like that felt like something out of the anime. It made the world feel a lot more alive. Are you guys starting to see what I'm saying? The next big step for the franchise happened with their most controversial titles, Gen 8's Pokemon Sword and Shield. Despite their many flaws, it's undeniable that Sword and Shield did a lot to make the region of Galar feel bigger. First is the ditching of the top-down camera that had been a staple in the series, opting for a third-person perspective. This change really allowed the player to feel like they were part of a 3D environment. We could now actually see far into the horizon, which helped make Galar feel more open. Another huge thing that Sword and Shield brought was the wild area. The wild area is basically the precursor to Scarlet and Violet, a big open area with Pokemon roaming all over the place. The player had free control of the camera and could go anywhere they wanted in this vast open space. Now, whether or not you think Pokemon Legends Arceus is mainline or not, it wouldn't be fair to ignore how much this game really shook things up. What Legends Arceus did was take the wild area concept and completely commit to it. 5 large areas to explore with caves, forests, mountains, beaches, oceans, Caves? Did I say caves twice? Yes, I did. You know why? There's caves everywhere. Wild Pokemon all over the place, inside trees, under rocks, swimming underwater. The darn things could even attack you. The game also had Pokemon that you could ride on, swim on, and even fly on. Add to this a more action RPG type of gameplay, and you had pretty much the dream concept for a Pokemon game. Something we learned this August at the Computer Entertainment Developers Conference, or CEDC, was that the development for Legends started in 2017, a year before Sword and Shield released, and development for Scarlet and Violet started in 2019. From this, we can infer that these new entries are built on what was learned from Legends, and it's obvious to see in the trailers. But not just from Legends, since Gen 6, even 5, GameFreak has been steadily making progress to make the games feel more open. The shift to 3D in Gen 6, which led to the eventual removal of the top-down perspective and a camera that allows the player to witness how large the world is. The subtle increase of Pokemon appearing in the overworld in Gen 7, which led to ditching random encounters and having wild Pokemon appear in the overworld. Even that particular thing changed greatly from Sword and Shield to Legends, going from being sorta limited to the tall grass outside of the wild area to really being able to be anywhere around the player. The rideable Pokemon feature of Let's Go and the soaring feature from Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are represented in Scarlet and Violet, with the box legendaries allowing the player to surf, move faster on land, and fly. Then you have the wild area, which went from one location in Sword and Shield, then turned into 5 open areas in Legends, into a whole open world in Scarlet and Violet. As I said earlier, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet feel like a natural progression of incremental improvements GameFreak has been doing for years. With all of this in mind, can we expect open world to be the new norm for Pokemon games? It very well might be, but one thing about GameFreak is that they always like to surprise people. Who knows? Maybe the next games are going to go back to 2D sprites? Still, it's pretty interesting to see the evolution of this series. And you? So what do you think? Is open world Pokemon here to stay? Let us know in the comments down below. And while you're down there, make sure to subscribe and drop us a like. Until next time, this has been Danny with Game Domain, and I'll see you in another video.